Our parents could buy a home at 27 and have a comfortable life. Today, the same dream costs way more for many 27-year-olds. So is housing still affordable here in New Zealand? I'm Nathan Najib, the Managing Director of Najib Real Estate. I've been in this business for over 20 years now. I want to talk about today if a 27-year-old can buy a home today versus 1990s. I'll compare two scenarios, one for single income couple back in 1990s like our parents used to in Christchurch, and the other for a 27-year-old couple in 2025 in Christchurch. What can they afford on dual income? That's both incomes. Disclaimer, these are rough estimates and we are not your financial advisors to help you understand a scenario with hypothetical example. Scenario number one, the baby boomer couple back in 1990s, like our parents, right? Now, let's rewind back to 1990s. Meet Graham and Amanda, both born in 1960s, part of the baby boomer generation. Graham is the main income earner, a typical setup back in the days. They are ready to buy their first home now. Now, Graham is 27-year-old. He's married, happily married, I must add, like back in the days that most couples were. And he's a qualified electrician. His annual salary is $45,000. That's well above your average $39,800 according to a stat that we got together. In mid-1990s, the average house cost was $125,440. That is your standard between 3 to 5 times average household income, which was $39,796,000. This here in this scenario is 3.2 times their income, which is, we talk about this in the past, 3 to 5 times household income is at an affordable level. Let's first take a rough estimate of his expenses back in 1990s. Graham's income and investments, $45,000 he brings annually. Gross monthly income is $3,750. Estimated net monthly income is $2,950. Graham's and his family's savings and investment, Kiwi Saver, that was not there back in the days. That came in 2007. The superannuation, optional, it was 2 to 3%. Home deposit saving, they had $15,000. Term deposit was $3,000 they had saved in a term deposit. Emergency fund was $2,000. Total available for home deposit, $20,000. 16%, that's 16% of their purchase. And banks back in 1990s, they required between 10 to 20% before you could buy a property. Now, Graham's expenses and his family's expenses in 1990, monthly expenses, rent before they bought the property was $780 per month. Utility and phones, $120 per month. Car loans and transport, $250 a month. The groceries were $400 a month. Insurance, cars, content and life insurance, $80 a month. Subscriptions and TV license, $25 a month. Lifestyle and entertainment, $200 a month. And clothing and household goods, $100 a month. Saving for deposit, they used to save $300 a month. And miscellaneous medical bills was $100 a month. And obviously this is your typical family expenses back in 1990s. The totals at $2,355. Remember, his income, or their household income, was $2,950 it leaves them with monthly surplus of $595 they can potentially add into their saving as well. Now, Graham disposable income in 1990s, net monthly income as we see $2,950. Minus the expenses, which is $2,355, they were left with disposable income of monthly $595. Now, mortgage affordability, 30 to 35% of income for housing. Affordable repayment was $1,125 per month. The interest rate was high back then. Our parents or grandparents talk about that quite often. It was 15 to 16% was your long-term 25-year interest rate for your properties. The borrowing power they had, they could borrow anything between $105,000 to $110,000. It's interesting. You can see what they could buy for that kind of money back then. The deposit of $20,000, total house budget, so deposit plus what they could borrow from the bank, it adds up, it's $125,000. Realistically, purchase option, where could they buy? What areas could they buy in? Hornby, quite nice areas. I've got a lot of friends grew up in the area. Linwood, average kind of area, they could buy there. Bishopdale, nice-ish area. And Aranui, type of house they could buy a 3-bedroom weatherboard house or a bungalow with a bit of section for the kids to run around. So it was an ideal home, Kiwi home, if you will. It was comfortable on a single income. Remember, it was comfortable. You could live a comfortable life with your father working, mum looking after the kids, and having that's your typical Kiwi happy family. That's only going back 35 years ago. Now, let's fast forward to what happened in 2025 today. Now, I did a post a little while back. They tell us that today we've got it better than our parents and grandparents had it. But there was a time in New Zealand, not too long ago, when family nucleus unit was celebrated. A mother could afford to raise her children at a home, and a father could afford to buy a nice home in a safe neighborhood, pay for his children's college, and then retire knowing his family future was assured. That word was stolen from us. That word was stolen from you and replaced with one where both parents work. Like they work their back off. If they are even still married, have to work just to pay the weekly bills. Owning a home is hard work now for people. Like people with single income, they can't even afford to buy a house anymore. A new car costs $50,000. Universities cost 5 times what it used to cost. Retirement is absolutely impossible. Like, people can't retire nowadays. School teaches your kids about sexuality and LGBTQs and to hate you instead of teaching them to solve mathematical problems and reading. And the police kneel to criminals, and politicians defund police and fund gangs instead of arresting them. What fascinates me and makes me upset, boils my blood, is that these politicians, the crooked politician, and banksters who stole this dream, this word from you and I, will look at you dead in the eye and tell you you're simply too stupid to understand why everything is now better than what it was. I want to bring you back to our generation, if you will, Generation Z. Now, couple. This is couple in 2025. Let's say you got Harry and Sophie. Their partner's been in a relationship and have been saving for their first home. The information, Harry and Sophie, as I said, they're around 27 years old, born in 1998. Partners, Harry's occupation is a school teacher. He earns around $75,000. Sophie's occupation is sales administration. Sophie's annual gross salary is $65,000. Let's take a rough look at the estimate of the expenses. Harry and Sophie's income breakdown. Annual income, Harry's $75,000. Sophie's annual income is $65,000. That's total $140,000. Harry brings in monthly gross before tax $6,250. He pays in taxes $1,120. His Kiwi saver $190. The net monthly income approximately around $4,940. In Sophie's, as I said, she earns $65,000. She brings home $5,417. The PAYE tax she pays $950. Kiwi saver, $160 goes toward her Kiwi saver, and she takes net monthly income approximately $4,307. The total income for the both of them is $140,000. Monthly gross income is $11,667. They pay in taxes $2,070. Their Kiwi saver is $350. Net approximately around $9,250 combined take home pay. Now, Harry's and Sophie's investment. Kiwi saver is for Harry's $35,000. That's 7 years of 3% employees. His saving and 3% of employers' contribution. Sophie's one is $21,000. 5 to 6 years of contribution. Recently, she switched over recently. Now, additional saving for home deposit, joined together, they've saved $18,000. Emergency fund, they got $8,000. 3 months worth of essential expenses saved for deposit if needed. Their total deposit is $35,000. That's Harry's. $21,000 Sophie's. $18,000 for their additional saving for home deposit together, and $8,000 emergency fund. They add that in there, so it's $82,000, including their Kiwi savers to use. Now, Harry and Sophie's expenses for 2025, monthly expenses, they at the moment rent out a 2-bedroom townhouse in Riccarton, which is shared between with another couple. They pay $1,180, so that's $295 between the two. If you times that by 4, it gives you $1,180. The utility and internet, once again, that's shared with other couple, $250. The car loans and transport, fuel, insurance, warrant of fitness, $750. Groceries, $850. Subscription and insurance, $250. Kia, food and vet insurance for their cat is $130. General lifestyle entertainment is $400 a month. Clothing and household goods, $180. Saving towards the deposit, $800. Miscellaneous and medical is $180. Obviously, these are great. They're a great couple. So they've got great saving and good strategic spending. Their monthly expense is $4,970. Now, Harry and Sophie need to keep their expenses tidy and consistent, as they have been, cutting back on non-essential and making sure their bank statement looks clean and stable for mortgage approval. So to be able to get a mortgage approval, there's stipulations there. They make sure that you can afford to pay your mortgage, because, whilst you think the house is owned by you, it's not your house, it's the bank's house for the next 25, 30, 35 years. So Harry's and Sophie's disposable income in 2025, net monthly income is not, as we said, $9,250. Total expenses for the both of them, shared rent and realistic living cost, is $4,970. Remaining disposable income is $4,280 per month. Now, mortgage affordability guideline is 30 to 35% income for housing. Affordable repayment, $3,000 to $3,200 per month. Interest rate at around now, it's a little bit lower, which is great makes it cheaper to buy or own a home. 4.99%, typical fix for 1 year. Now, borrowing, what can they borrow with that kind of income? What can they borrow? They can borrow between $580,000 to $600,000 after factoring rates, insurance, which we'll cover in next slide. Deposit, they must have 82,000. Kiwi saver and cash saving. Total house budget, if you add their deposit and their pre-approval, it gives them, they can buy something between $660,000 to $680,000. Realistic purchase optional, you can probably buy an entry-level townhouse or a new build 2-bedroom in Selwyn or some of those subdivisions outskirts of Christchurch. You can potentially buy an average place at around Riccarton, Redwood, Rolleston, Kaipoi, and east side of the city. Things to keep in mind: additional ownership costs. You got council rates, you got expenses, wear and tear, and we usually like to put aside $10,000 a year for wear and tear, insurance, and council cost. Obviously, to buy a home, you've got these legal conveyancing costs, which is typically around $1,300 to $2,000 plus GST, plus disbursement. And some banks want to get valuation for pre-purchase report, like getting valuation and a builder report perhaps. That will cost somewhere between, at around, I think, $295 we've put in there to 600 plus here and there, depending on your property type, obviously, and details. There are some additional costs that do come along when purchasing a property, so make sure you keep that in mind. Perhaps there might be a builder's report, or there might be some other things that needs to be done to before you can purchase a property. So deposit and loan pathway, what can they do to be able to get into the property ladder? 2025 reality check. Harry and Sophie have saved an impressive $82,000. So well done to you, Sophie and Harry. A lot of couples, a lot of single people want to get into the property ladder. So that's like very hard unless the parents trying to help, and they've got a pretty good job, which is not your common single person, or even couple don't earn that kind of money that Harry and Sophie are on. So they've saved $82,000, which give them roughly about 12% deposit on average home price of $660,000, $680,000. Major banks at the moment, majority of the banks, they require 20% deposit. However, these guys can look other options. The other option will be, because at the moment the major bank they've only got 12%, so it's well below the bank will allow you. At the moment, most banks are 20%. Unless I think there's some areas you can buy a brand new home. They're becoming more flexible. As the market gets tougher, I've seen this in the past, the banks become easier to let you borrow money. So there will be options out there. But at the moment, if you went to major banks, they fall below their requirement. So the option will be to borrow some more money from the family, maybe the mum and dad, bank or mum and dad as we call it, or the first home grant, the Kāinga Ora, which is some of the banks will allow you to borrow at 5%. They will let you, if using your Kiwi saver, which means with 12%, you can meet that criteria. Once again, please check the official website for these, what the banks require. That's what, from our research and my experience, that's what the banks currently require. We've also got a reference here. So have a look. There's some information about the Kāinga Ora first home grant, if you will. We've spoken about in the past the household income versus price. How many times your household income is average or median house price? Back in 2005, it was your household income needs to be no more than 5 times the house price, because affordability is between 3 to 5 times household income. Back in 2005, if I go to 1990, which I'm going to go in a minute, it was well below that 3 to 5 times household income. But if you go back even to 2005, it was 4.8 times household income was the average home price. And 2006, it increased 5.2 times, and then 5.4. So it fluctuated around 5 to 5.8 2016, and then 2017 6.4 times, and then it increased again 2021 7.6 times, and then it's come back in 2025 to 6.5 times household income. Now, let me go back and do a comparison of what it was like for our parents as opposed to today's, what is like for today's a 27-year-old, like in this case. Now, let's take, for example, 1990s, Graham and Amanda, or your parents, and 2025, Harry and Sophie, or maybe you. So 27-year-old, home in Christchurch. In Christchurch, remember, it's a lot more cheaper than other major cities. That's why we've got a big entrance to Christchurch. So if you're an electrician in 1990s, you're a 27-year-old, you've got your wife at home looking after the kids, cooking you nice and warm meals when you come home, and the family's taken care of. You've got a nice house and comfortable house that you live in, and you make $45,000 a year. Your net monthly income is $2,950. Your expenses is $2,355. Monthly surplus, you save $595. Interest rate, you pay 15%. Your deposit you've saved $20,000. Borrowing power you have is $105,000 to $110,000. The total house budget for your next home is $125,000. Price to income ratio. That's an important thing because, like we said, to be an affordable level, to be able to own a house and be affordable, have a good life, is between 3 to 5 times household income. In this case, back in the days, our parents could have a comfortable life and pay only 2.8 times their income towards their home interest, even though the interest was at 15%. Now, the national average was back then was 3.2 times household income. Council rates was $1,000 back then, and their legal cost would be around $500. They could live in a nice and comfortable 3-bedroom, nice weatherboard or brick bungalow, and comfortable in one single income. So if you earn back in 1990s, just you or your husband worked, you could have a comfortable life and have a good, live in a beautiful home. Fast forward 35 years, Harry and Sophie, 27-year-old in Christchurch once again. He's a teacher, she's a sales admin. So dual income, they bring in $140,000. Net monthly income is $9,250. The monthly expenses, $4,970. Monthly surplus, they end up with surplus of $4,280. Current fixed rate is 4.99, so the interest rate is a lot lower than what it was back in the days. They have got saving of $82,000. In this case, like I said, these guys have been religiously saving, and that's a great saving for a 27-year-old. Most people, most young couple, most young people don't have that kind of saving because the expectations have gone through the roof, right? So the borrowing power is $580,000 to $600,000. Total house budget, they can borrow anything around $660,000, $680,000. If they were to buy in Christchurch, it's 4.8 times household income. Christchurch average ratio in 2025 equals 6.5 times household income. So if you bought an average home in Christchurch, it's 6.5 times your income. So if you times your 140,000 income by 6.5, that will give you an average home in Christchurch. But in this case, they're buying a home between 660, 680,000. That's what they can afford. So they're good good couple, so they're buying something less than average. And most people, remember, most people in today's society, they can't live in an average house. The council rate, that's pretty cheap at 3,200, because most council rate will be around 5,000. And their legal cost will be 2,500. They could probably buy something around 2 to 3 bedroom, probably townhouse, probably slightly outside Christchurch, or they can potentially buy something in east side of town. This thing here is, they can't do this in a single income. Now you've gotta have dual income, otherwise this thing is not possible. You can't buy yourself, unfortunately, buy a house. So you must be working. Both of you must be working. So, and the majority, if you look at today's society, you see they drop off the kids to the kindergarten or the school, and they run to work, both of them. And then 5 o'clock, they go run back and pick up the kid, obviously kindergarten. What I'm saying, most of the kids spend their time in kindergarten, as opposed to back in the days, you could raise your beautiful kid and have instilled your own family values in your kids. In conclusion, another measure of housing affordability was number of years it took you to save a deposit in 1990s. It took 4.2 years, whereas now, if it's even possible for kids to save money, it takes way longer than 4.2 years. Imagine saving, how long does it take you to save 82,000? Like in Sophie and Harry's case, they saved 82,000. It takes you way longer than 4.2 years. My thoughts in this: yes, you might be able to buy a property in today's society, but the truth is this: the dream that it was you could raise a beautiful family, live in a beautiful house, and still have your kids to run around, raise your kids, and instill your own core values in your kids. That is not possible, unfortunately. When you look at today's society, when you look at today's kids, or even when both parents work, they're still together, which is very rare. But even if they're still together, they're working their back off. They're running to work. They're coming back home. They spend hardly any time with their kids. The kids are raised by school teachers, kindergarten, rather than themselves. So buying a home may be possible if you're lucky enough to have a good, stable partner, and you've been disciplined enough to save enough money to put towards a home and buy a home. But if you look back in 1990s, it was fantastic. It was amazing. In today's society, it is doable, but it's very, very hard. So to be able to do this, what do? You need to be very disciplined. You need to save your back off, work your back off. So my suggestion would be, work hard when you're young, when you're way young, and put money aside to be able to afford a home in 27, and find yourself a lovely partner so you can have a good family with. That's my suggestion. Otherwise, you just can't buy a house in today's society. In Christchurch, this is in Christchurch. And if you go to Auckland, it's 11 times household income. Somebody told me the other day it's 14 times household income, which becomes absolutely impossible. We've spoken about this in our past video. I did a podcast about how we're heading towards the cliff. Home prices need to come back to be at affordable level. The council rates need to come back, and these politicians need to change their strategy to be able to help our kids to get back into, to be able to have a comfortable and good life. Thank you for your time. I hope it's been of help to you. Subscribe to our channel below so we can keep you guys updated. Thank you very much.